Weekly check-in episode 1. So I am currently week 10 into my muscle gaining phase. I'm up 0.25 kilos from last week, which is bang on my weekly average weight gain target of 0.25 kilograms each week. Again, I'm not too concerned about the weekly weight gain target, but more the monthly target, which is 1 kilogram per month, which is set off my training edge. I'm still looking pretty lean, so I'm going to continue with my nutrition setup. No changes needed this week. Alright, so here's the blood testing kit that I ordered. Obviously, if you've not seen last week's video, basically what I'm doing is I've been following If It Fits Your macros and micros, I like to call it, for the past few months when I've done my fat loss phase, maintenance, and now in my muscle gaining phase. And one of the things I want to do is see the effectiveness of my diet and make sure that there's no nutrition deficiencies in there. So one of the ways in which I am going to do that is by doing some blood work. So I'm going to get my vitamin, mineral and lipid profile taken from this blood test. So one of my friends and old lecturers, Jamie Crovers, he owns a company called Neuroptimax Diagnostics, and they do lots of different blood work and blood testing. But yeah, I've decided to get my vitamin, mineral and lipid profile taken. So I've been sent the box out last week. Here's the instructions, dead easy to follow. So the first thing I've had to do is wash my hands with warm soapy water. Obviously I've done that off camera. We're going to take the blood from the end of my little finger, and the idea is that I'm going to fill up to the top line of that with my blood, and then I'll obviously send it off to the lab. But it comes with dead easy instructions, and it comes with everything in the kit as well. So you've got the lancelet for taking the actual, for obviously pricking the little finger for taking the blood. You've got the tube for collecting it. We've got the wipe that we need to use. We've got plasters. We've got the address to send the obviously blood sample off, and a bag for it as well. So literally everything you can think of comes with it as well. So what I'll do is I'll put it on a time lapse, because I'm sure you don't want to watch me drawing my blood, and then once I've sent it off, we'll go through and hopefully in a week's time get the results back, and we can see how effective my diet has been over the last few months. All right, test complete. I just need to label it up and send it off now. That was honestly so easy, and I'm not just saying that. I'm not gonna lie, at first when I got the tube, I was like, how on earth am I gonna fill that to the top line with my blood? But it was so fast and so easy. So honestly, it's so dead easy to do. If you did wanna do one of these tests, don't be put off thinking that you're gonna have to give, you know, a bit of blood or something like that. It was dead easy to do and a lot less effort than I thought it would be, and the instructions make it dead simple to do. So I'm going to get this labelled up and sent off. So I've been documenting my recent fat loss, maintenance and the start of my muscle gaining phase on Instagram. But I've wanted to come and start doing it on YouTube because I kind of want to show people how you should be losing weight, maintaining your weight, and actually gaining weight correctly. Because too often what I see happen is people perform what I like to call the yearly transformation, where what they'll do is they'll have a holiday or an event or something coming up, lose a load of weight for it, so a crash diet, let's say 4 weeks out. They'll go on holiday, do the thing, looking, you know, a bit better about themselves, and then as soon as they get back, within 6 months, they've regained all the weight back and more. Or what will happen is people will do a successful fat loss phase or diet, whatever you want to call it, and then they bulking phase, they'll just gain a load of fat and have no muscle to show for it because they've not done it at the correct rate of weight gain. So what I'm going to go through today is just the overview of my current setup and what I've been doing. I will go into each of these phases in more detail in the weekly check-ins in the next coming weeks, but I thought I'd just get a bit of an overview so you can kind of see and understand what's been happening. Okay, so I started with a fat loss phase, and this is where I recommend that most people start, even if you are wanting to build muscle, simply because if you do want to build muscle, we need to allow long enough for you to do a bulking, gaining phase, whatever you want to call it, because when you do gain weight, you are going to gain it in a ratio pretty much of 1-to-1, where it's going to be for every kilo of muscle, you're going to gain a kilo of fat. That's just, if you're a natural athlete, you know, you're not taking steroids, performance enhancing drugs or something like that. That is just the unfortunate effect that when you gain weight, it is going to be in a 1-to-1 ratio. So I recommend most people start with a fat loss phase. Depending on how heavy you are, will depend on what body fat percentage you need to get to. Now, for most people, getting to 10 to 15% body fat is a good place, because you can then either learn how to maintain this result from here, so then moving into something called a maintenance phase, which we'll run through in a second, or you then can go into the gaining phase. But around that 10 to 15% body fat is a good place for most people to maintain. 10% is a little bit more difficult, but kind of that 12 to 15% is a good place to maintain. But if you wanted to get really lean, then probably getting 10% is a good place. So for me, I ran a group of 10 people who all did a fat loss phase with me. Now, it was scheduled for 7 weeks, and I did it for 7 weeks, but we all did an aggressive fat loss phase. Now, an aggressive fat loss phase means when you are in a deficit on a weekly basis larger than 1%, which is what I was in. I was in a 1.5% deficit, which is quite extreme. But because I've done plenty of diets in the past and have good experience and can control, obviously, my physical activity on a day-to-day basis because I'm a full-time online coach, for me, it was relatively easy to do. And so within that 7 weeks, I actually managed to drop 7 kilos and got down to around 9 to 8% body fat. So once I'd completed the fat loss phase, I then moved into the maintenance phase. Now, I went straight from the fat loss phase into a maintenance phase. What I did not do is a reverse diet, which is where I see so many people go wrong. There's two ways they'll go wrong, I should say, on that. They'll either do a reverse diet, which will then take them, let's say, the reverse of that. So if you diet for 7 weeks, it might take you, let's say, 7 to 8 weeks to reverse your calories back up, slowly adding 15 grams of carbs here, 5 grams of fats there, and you're still in a deficit then actually for another 8 weeks until you get to maintenance. But you don't need to do that. Once you've finished your diet, you can go straight back to maintenance calories. And it obviously will be a little bit less than when you started because you've reduced your weight down, but you should be able to calculate what your new maintenance calories are. The second thing where I see a lot of people go wrong after a fat loss phase, so picture the scene, you've lost, let's say, 20 kilo, you've hit your goal weight that you wanted to, you've hit your target body fat, diet stops, training stops, 6 months time you've regained all the weight. Losing weight is just the first part of the journey, which is why the maintenance phase is so important, and it's the bit that everybody misses. And there's 2 parts to maintenance. And again, this is something I'll come into in a later video, but you've got the maintenance with tracking, which is what I did, where you'll take a period of maintenance at 2 to 4 weeks at your maintenance calories and nutrition targets, whatever they are. And then you'll move into something called maintenance without tracking, where you need to learn habits and behaviors you need to do on a daily, weekly basis to make sure that you maintain your weight without tracking your nutrition intake. Because remember, the idea of tracking your nutrition intake should be that one day you can then be able to step away and not track. I will, for most periods of my life, not be tracking my nutrition. It's usually only when I'm in a fat loss phase, a muscle gaining phase, and potentially sometimes in a maintenance where I will be tracking my nutrition. The idea of what I want to teach most people, though, who come and work with me is that you don't have to track your nutrition forever, but it is something you need to do intensively so you can learn the calorie, micronutrient composition of food and how much you should be having of these. So once I completed the fat loss phase, I went into the maintenance phase. I did this for 2 weeks. So I was at maintenance calories, aiming for my macro targets, calorie targets. And then once I'd done that for 2 weeks, I went into the gaining phase, which is what I'm currently in now. So I'm currently in week 10 of my gaining phase. Obviously from the video at the start, last week I gained 0.25 kilos, which is about my weekly rate of weight gain target that I'm aiming for. Now, the weekly rate of weight gain when we're looking at a gaining phase, it actually needs more than monthly that we're more focused on rather than the weekly, because depending upon what you set the target rate of weight gain, which should be based on your training age. So it's anywhere from usually around 0.5 to 1.5% of body weight, depending on whether you're a beginner all the way through to an advanced trainee. But the issue I see with most people is once they finish a fat loss phase is that they will just pretend or kid themselves that they are bulking and just gain a load of fat. The goal is to gain as much muscle as possible while minimizing fat gain. Duration, it needs to be at least 6 months for most people, but I can already see that I'm going to be gaining for a lot longer than 6 months because body fat's not changed heaps since finishing the fat loss phase and doing the maintenance phase. So which obviously is a great sign that, you know, a lot of the weight I will be gaining is muscle. So I will be gaining for at least 6 months or until I reach 20% body fat. That's kind of the upper end limit, I would say, to somebody's body fat levels. Once I've completed the gaining phase, then I've got a choice of what I want to do next. Now, I already know in the back of my mind what I'm going to do, but let me explain these different phases. So I could either move back into maintenance for 2 to 4 weeks or permanently. I could just stay at maintenance. I can move into something called maximum maintenance, which is where I'm increasing my calories on a week-to-week basis, trying to find the maximum level I can take my calories while not gaining weight. So I could then move into a fat loss phase. If I move back into a fat loss phase, the idea would be to diet down to the same body fat percentage I was at before starting the muscle gaining phase to then see the muscle that I've built in that and get rid of the body fat gained. Or I could potentially look at doing a body recomposition. Now, body recompositions are a bit of a debated topic, and it's still something that I'm not 100% sure on, which is kind of why I think I would like to perform one. A body recomposition is where we're looking at where you can lose body fat and gain muscle at the same time, where we essentially at maintenance. But in order for us to be gaining muscle, we always do need to be in a slight caloric surplus. So again, that's something that I'm going to have a little bit more research into and looking at whether I potentially want to do a body recomposition, because
part of this thing of going through this process and doing this, again, it's because I coach my clients and this is the systems and things that I use, but it's also I like to try new things. And I've never really attempted to do a body recomposition because I find that for most people who do a body recomposition, just end up spinning the wheels. Then either losing fat, gaining muscle, they're kind of just maintaining this, physique that they may have had for years. Whereas when we put all our focus and efforts in either, losing weight, gaining weight, we're kind of going to get the better result of that, or if we're looking at a maintenance phase as well. So hopefully that's answered obviously what I've been doing with my diet, and I'm going to keep documenting and checking in every week. What I'll go through is how I set these phases up, the details of it, how much of a deficit I was in, how much of a surplus I'm in, what I did for the maintenance phase as well.